This is Sydney.
And I'm Sher. And each week we get together to share with you a message of hope.
It is through our own study and our personal experiences that we offer the reminder to not only seek the light,
but be the light. You can find peace, and there is hope.
And as long as one of us is slightly caffeinated, there will be laughter.
Today's episode is Hidden Heroes.
And we're so glad you're here.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop.
Okay, Sydney, today we're going to talk about hidden heroes. The reason that we wanted to do this episode is because last week we talked about planting seeds, and we have the capability of doing good where and whenever we can. And as we're doing that, we don't know the seeds that we're planting to help and build others up.
I'm excited for this topic. I've been looking up a lot about heroes. One thing I searched is, what is a hero? The definition was a real person or a main fictional character who is in the face of danger, combats adversity through feats, courage, or strength. The original hero type of classic epics did such for the sake of glory and honor. Post-classical and modern heroes, on the other hand, perform great deeds or selfless acts for the common good, instead of classical goals of wealth, pride, and fame. I liked that.
Me too. I like that a lot.
And then I Googled who is a hero, kind of wondering what would pop up in our modern world of fame and wealth and fortune for others. And I had this thought. If I say these names, does a picture pop into your head? Can you see their face? Do you know who they are? Do you know anything about them at all? Elon Musk, Taylor Swift, LeBron James, Joe Rogan, Beyonce.
Yes.
All of them?
All of them.
Okay. What about, you can't answer this because we've prepared, but those listening, Mammy Kate, Prince Whipple, Desmond Doss, Helmut Hubner. Did anyone come to your mind when those names were mentioned? Because who do we consider a hero? Who do you personally consider a hero? Do you consider a hero a teacher who gives personal time to help a struggling student, Oprah Winfrey, a television icon, a firefighter who risked his or her life to save someone, John Bon Jovi, a rock star, a soldier who risked his or her life keeping others safe, Steve Jobs, an innovator in technology, a police officer who risked his or her life to protect others, or Emmitt Smith, a professional football player, an award-winning dancer. Did you know he was a dancer?
Yeah, Dancing with the Stars.
I didn't know
Yes.
that. I was like, wait, is this the same Emmitt Smith that I was thinking of?
Same Emmitt Smith.
Okay. I did not know he was an award-winning dancer, but I will say that I did do cheerleading 1 year, and anyone who can dance, I do believe you might be a hero compared to what I did. The sad thing is there's video footage out there somewhere.
We must find it.
Oh,
Put it on YouTube.
If someone destroys that, they will be my hero. An article I found, they had some suggestions for what a hero is. A hero is someone who rises up from whatever their circumstances are and comes to embody a representation of the highest level that a human being can attain. A hero is someone who knowingly and voluntarily makes a conscious decision to sacrifice something of oneself for the greater good of others. The actions of a hero makes a positive impact on others so as to change the outcome of situations that would otherwise be detrimental. A hero does not expect compensation for their heroic deeds. And the last one, a hero contributes something beneficial to the world for the betterment of humanity as a whole, or for the spiritual world in creating a path that leads us in a higher direction. I love those definitions of a hero. In the same article, it says to be sure you know what a hero is versus an idol. Because if you do not know the difference between someone who is famous and an idol, then it could take away the importance of what an actual hero is. Someone who is willing to sacrifice for no compensation at all for the greater good of the world. And today, Sher and I are going to share some of our favorite heroes that we are calling hidden heroes. Lesser known about people who have done great good for the world, and maybe their names are not known.
So our first hidden hero is from the Book of Mormon, and it is Abish. I really love this story. I am going to read a summary about her that I found. It says, Abish was a Lamanite convert of surpassing faith, servant to the queen of King Lamoni, recognized that the power of God had overcome the king, queen, and Ammon when they fell to the ground unconscious. She gathered people to witness the event and then raised the queen with her touch when the confusion of the crowd led to contention. Many believed the testimonies of the revived queen, who then raised the king, who also testified of Jesus. What I love about this story is her faith. As soon as she had the opportunity to share her testimony of Christ, she openly did. And then she had the faith to touch the queen. And I love how brave she was, because I can't imagine that a servant was allowed to touch a queen. She wasn't afraid of the crowd and of the queen, and she wasn't afraid of the consequences for touching the queen. And she had the faith that when she touched her, that the queen would wake up. This story just makes me wonder, how was she converted? How long had she been praying? Were there other followers of Christ in her family or friends? I just have so many questions about the story, but the bottom line is I admire her faith, I admire her testimony of Christ, and I admire her bravery. I hope that I can be more like that, that when I get the opportunity to testify of Christ, that I will be brave enough to do it.
I was actually about the age of Helmut Hübner when I learned his story. He became my first hidden hero, and I will forever have a piece of his story in my heart. Helmut Hübner was a 16-year-old young boy growing up in Germany in the 1930s. He was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Helmut was extremely intelligent. He was called to aid the clerk of his ward at church and often wrote letters for the ward. This would give him access to the most powerful weapon he could get a hold of, the typewriter. Helmut's older brother would bring home an old broken radio that Helmut would be able to fix and get working again. One night, while playing on the newly fixed radio, he was able to tune into a banned radio station, the BBC London. Though this channel was banned, it would not stop Helmut from listening. At the time, like all the youth, he was involved in the Hitler Youth Group and even had written a pro-Nazi report. But when he started listening to the BBC London station, he knew immediately in his heart the real truth. And even at his young age of 16 years old, he knew that he had a moral obligation to speak the truth, despite the consequences and despite the punishments that could come his way. Helmut invited his friend Carl over to listen to the radio. Carl wanted nothing to do with it. But his eyes being open to the truth put on him the heavy burden to act alongside with Helmut. Helmut would also bring another young man from church, Rudy, into the group. Both boys were not very excited, but all three boys felt obligated. Rudy was only 15, Helmut 16, and Carl 17. Helmut had access to the radio, a typewriter, and books that had been banned. And he would write up leaflets, and the three boys would distribute them at night in telephone booths, in people's coat pockets, and anywhere else they could manage. The first night that Carl distributed 7 leaflets, he came home feeling so sick that his mom asked him if he was okay. He said, "No, Mom, I am not." And she said, "You better go to bed." And he thought it might be the last time I ever go to bed.
Yeah, for sure.
But he was not arrested the next day. The leaflets were written so brilliantly that it was assumed a 30-year-old professor was writing them.
Wow.
It was when Helmut would attempt to have another friend translate the leaflets into French that he would be caught. For 5 days, he would be tortured before finally revealing the names of the other boys involved, Carl and Rudy. The German officers could not believe that 3 teen boys were behind the movement, so they would arrest another man from their ward named Otto. He would be tortured for several days before they finally accepted that it was truly just 3 young boys who were behind the leaflets, and Otto would be released. An attempt to save Carl and Rudy from the maximum sentence, Helmut stayed calm and bold. When asked by the court if he really believed that Germany would fail, he would say, "Yes, don't you?" His aggressive approach worked. Carl received only 5 years in a labor camp, Rudy 10 years, and Helmut was sentenced to death. After their sentencing, the court asked if they would like to say anything. Carl and Rudy said nothing. Helmut spoke up and said, "I have to die now for no crime at all, but your turn is next."
Ooh.
That's wild.
That's
bold.
Got some guts.
On August 11th, Helmut would receive an official letter to be condemned to death signed by Hitler himself. Helmut is the youngest resistance fighter to be executed. Helmut was allowed to write 3 letters before his execution. He wrote one to his mother, one to his grandparents, and the last to dear friends from church. The first 2 letters were destroyed, but the letter to the Summerfield family remained, and they still have it to this day, though some of the words are blotted out from his tears.
Oh my goodness, that's so sad.
He wrote, When you receive this letter, I will be dead. Please remember me kindly. I am very thankful to my Heavenly Father that this agonizing life is coming to an end this evening. My Father in heaven knows that I have done nothing wrong. I know that God lives, and he will be the proper judge of this matter. Until our happy reunion in a better world, I remain your friend and brother in the gospel.
That's beautiful.
By the late 1950s, the Hübner group was virtually forgotten in Germany, though they were one of the first resistant groups, 3 young teens. But in 1960, a young college student discovered their story, bringing it to life again. Further research would reveal Helmut's name means to practice courage.
That is so good.
Oh, that story. I feel like I can't wait to meet him one day.
Yeah, for sure.
And he'll be like, you 40-year-old loser.
Okay, I'm going to stick with an American Revolutionary War theme for the rest of mine. The next one that I have is Mammy Kate. I love teaching about Mammy Kate. This story might be a bit exaggerated, but who cares? It's a great story. So Mammy Kate was a slave, and she was owned by Stephen Hurd of Georgia. And Stephen Hurd joined the American Revolution to fight against the British. At one point, the British soldiers invaded his home and kicked his family out of their own house. And because of that, his wife and one of his daughters died from exposure to the weather. And shortly after that, Stephen Hurd was captured by the British and he was sentenced to be executed. But his slave, Mammy Kate, she wasn't having it. She went to the prison and she started doing the British soldiers' laundry and she gained their trust. She was there for a few days doing the laundry and she kept saying, I have a clean pair of clothes for my owner, Stephen Hurd. I really just would like to go into the prison and give him a clean pair of clothes. Finally, they agreed. Because, what is she going to do? I'm going to quote the story from here. The story goes that Mammy Kate took a large laundry basket into the prison on her head. When she saw Stephen Hurd, she convinced him to climb into the laundry basket. Mammy Kate placed the basket on her head and walked out with the prisoner hidden underneath a few linens. I'm sure you're thinking, how could a woman carry a man on her head in a basket? An 1820 letter described Mammy Kate as a very tall and fearless woman. It is also commonly known that slaves carried baskets laden with all sorts of things for long distances. After she got her owner out of the prison, Mammy Kate was given her freedom in return, but she stayed on the plantation with her husband, Daddy Jack. Tell me, I want to meet these two. Mammy Kate and Daddy Jack, they had to have been a hoot, just by their names.
I know, I feel so inferior, Ben and Sydney.
I know. I love
Mammy Kate, Daddy Jack.
Right? You know they're cool.
She's carrying the world not on her shoulders, but on her head.
Yeah, she's a tough
She's
lady.
amazing.
Right. Both Daddy Jack and Mammy Kate are buried alongside the Hurd family. Mammy Kate was finally honored in 2011 as a heroine of the American Revolution by the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution. That's Mammy Kate. Love that story.
I love that story so much. You could feel her energy in the story that she did not put up with crap.
You can tell.
She was like your ancestor, has a pistol in her bosom and a man on her head.
That's right.
She's like, my man doesn't stand in front or on the side of me, but on my head. I carry him.
You go, Mammy Kate.
We need to be more like her. She needs to be known.
She does.
My next hidden hero comes from a verse in Ether 10. I remember reading this and it stuck out so much for me to read a simple story with so much hidden in it. The backstory is just that this man is in captivity, and while in captivity, he bore several sons and several daughters. One of the sons' name was Levi. Here's the verse. And it came to pass that Levi did serve in captivity after the death of his father for the space of 42 years. And he did make war against the king of the land, by which he did obtain unto himself the kingdom. The reason I find Levi to be a hidden hero is because he was born in captivity and he lived that way for 42 years. But at some point, he decided that he had enough. I find Levi to be a cycle breaker. And I know so many people can relate. We have people in our family history who have left countries, who have found faith, who have broken the cycle of addiction or abuse and have changed their own life and the life of their future generations. When Levi is out of captivity and has the kingdom, this is what it's said of him. And after he obtained unto himself the kingdom, he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. And the people did prosper in the land, and he did live to be a good old age. Levi was a cycle breaker. People who decide that no matter what their circumstances were, just like the definition in the beginning, that no matter your circumstances, that you rise to become your best self and it blesses those around you. That's what Levi did. And there are so many people that will never know their names who are hidden heroes, who take upon themselves the awareness to change future generations. And that's what Levi did.
Working at my school, I saw lots of cycle breakers in my students, and they definitely are my heroes. I look up to them so much for what they've been able to overcome in their life. They're amazing. That was a great story. My next hidden hero is about Prince Whipple, who was in the American Revolution. He was from a royal or wealthy African family. At the age of 10, he was sent to America to get an education, but he was kidnapped and he was sold as a slave. The person who bought him was William Whipple, and that's where Prince Whipple gets his last name. The story goes that on William Whipple's way to the army, he told his servant, Prince, that if they should be called into action, he expected that he would behave like a man of courage and fight bravely for his country. Prince replied, first of all, this dude, woof, imagine a slave saying this to his owner. Prince replied, Sir, I have no inducement to fight, but if I had my liberty, I would endeavor to defend it to the last drop of my blood. The general freed him on the spot. Prince Whipple did become an American soldier during the Revolution. He fought in the battles of Saratoga, Rhode Island, and he directly attended General George Washington and the general staff throughout the Revolution. So he served as a soldier and an aide at the very highest levels of our army. That's pretty cool. But here's the really cool part. You know that painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware, where there's ice in the water and George Washington is standing up and there's all these men in the boat paddling across the Delaware River?
Yes,
with me?
I do know that.
Because I have the picture.
Because you're holding it.
I'm holding it, saying this picture right here.
I know
Sydney.
exactly which one you're talking about, Sher.
This was painted by a German man that was trying to sway the public during the European revolutions that were in the 1840s. And he painted this as an example of freedom and individual and natural rights. The first one was destroyed in a fire, but the second one made it here to the United States in 1851. This is 10 years before the Civil War started. And it became a big deal. Like people lined up to go see this amazing, beautiful painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware. But this is the cool part. He put in the boat various heroes from the American Revolution. All those men weren't in the boat with George Washington. He just painted different heroes from the Revolution and put them in the boat, symbolic of individuals fighting for their freedom. Many people believe that Prince Whipple is the one that is right next to George Washington paddling. He's right by his knee. So many people think that's Prince Whipple in that boat with him in that crossing of the Delaware. Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome.
This painting served as a wake-up call to America right before the Civil War, at a time that we were becoming more and more divided over the issue of slavery. This is a wake-up call that we're going in the wrong direction, because they were a wonderful group of diverse men in the boat. So that's Prince Whipple. Look at that painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware. He's paddling right by George Washington's knee.
I love that story. And
Thanks.
Prince Whipple is another great name.
It really is.
All right, my next one is Desmond Doss. Doss was born in 1919 in Virginia. His family was very religious. They belonged to the Seventh-day Adventist faith. He believed in the 10 Commandments, especially thou shalt not kill. Now, that's good because I think that's a clear one to follow in general. But what was difficult about believing this is that World War II started, and he believed the war was just, but he believed that killing was wrong, and he didn't want to carry a gun and go to war. And so what he did instead was join the army, but he wanted to join as a medic. At first, Doss, his commanders, they wouldn't allow him to be a medic. They wanted him to murder people along with everybody else, but he refused. So eventually they did move him to a medic, but he was bullied for all of his beliefs. He was bullied for reading the Bible, and they worship on Saturdays. And so he wanted Saturday off and continually asked for Saturday off. And they finally gave it to him, but the others had Sunday off. So they thought he was trying to get out of work. They didn't see him showing up on Sundays to work because Saturdays he was doing his religious duties. And so he was bullied for having Saturdays off, but above all, I believe he was bullied for following a mostly vegetarian diet. So the men were worried that a man who didn't eat beef, how was that medic going to save them on the battlefield when all he's been eating is carrots and kale? And they were really concerned about this.
They had a lot of kale in the battlefield. They just had it shipped in.
I assume vegetarian equals kale. But we do like some kale in our home to feed to the chickens. So eventually he would prove himself to the other men, even the ones that picked on him, because through drills and practice marches, he always showed up and was always there helping, especially on the battlefield. And it was a war crime to target the medics. But during some of the worst battles, the enemy specifically targeted the medics, and they wore red crosses on them, so they're pretty easy to target. And so a lot of the medics took off the red crosses and would try to blend in with the men because obviously the enemy's thinking, if we attack the medics, then they're going to not be able to help the wounded. And it seemed like a good battle plan, but it was against the rules of war.
I've never understood rules of war.
Me either. Where's the line?
And what bad guy follows the rules of war? They don't.
There's good men on both sides.
Agreed.
And bad men on both sides.
Yeah. So if you're a bad guy, why would you follow the rules of war? Anyway, continue.
Okay. All right. Well, Doss got to work. He didn't hide. And he just went out there and saved it. The men would report that they would see Doss constantly on his knees praying over people who were wounded. And bullets would just be flying by him. He would get them to safety. And over time, the same men that bullied him would start asking Doss for prayers and advice from the Bible. His example went from, you weak little kale eating man, to tell me more about God, and will you please add me to your prayers? One of the worst battles that took place, it was the bloodiest one. This is the one where the medics were being specifically targeted. And Doss got to work on this one as well. He got out there. He saved over 75 men by being inspired to use a specific knot. He would go out onto the battlefield, carry people in, and lower them down to safety using a knot that he had learned as a child. And every single time he saved a man, he would pray. And the men saw this. And he would later say that what he was praying for was, God, please help me save one more man. Thank you for helping me save this man. Every single time for 75 times. His story is really inspiring because he just refused to break what he believed. Later, a sniper on the other side would say that he had Doss in his sights several times. And every single time he went to pull the trigger, it would jam. It would shoot other people, but it would never shoot Doss. Doss would be rewarded with 2 Bronze Stars, and in 1945, President Truman awarded him with the Medal of Honor. There is also a story that Doss lost his Bible when he was wounded in the next battle, and he begged to go back so that he could look, but he was so injured that they wouldn't let him go. But the men who were carrying him to safety promised that they would spread the word, and the men who once mocked him worked together, and they found his Bible on the battlefield and brought it to him.
That was a great story. I love that story. He's so courageous, and I love how he stuck to what he believed no matter what. I wish I had a tad bit of that. My life would be so much better.
I love that he stuck to what he believed too, but not in a lazy way. He would never carry a gun or a weapon like the other medics did. He refused. He did not want to be tempted. He just wanted to get out there and do what he believed, but he was so courageous and he trusted God so much with his life.
That's beautiful. My last hidden hero, I know you've heard her name. Her name is Betsy Ross. But I'm going to give you a few little things about Betsy Ross that you might not know, all right?
I'm excited.
So Betsy Ross, when most people think of her, they see grandma sitting in a rocking chair sewing our flag.
That's exactly what came to mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let me tell you. Betsy Ross was known for being a beautiful woman and a seamstress. She was about 24 or 25 when she started to get involved in the American Revolution. She was a widow at this point, and many believe that she was a spy that reported directly to George Washington. The reason we don't know for sure is because the spies at the time, they didn't write their names down, because if anybody found that book or letter where their names were written down, they were going to get executed. So they made up different like spy names. So we don't know for sure who it is, but some people believe that it's Betsy Ross that did this.
Do you know what the spy name was?
I don't, sorry.
It's like Retsy Haas.
Yeah, that was it. All right. So we just talked about George Washington crossing the Delaware. Where he was going was to the Battle of Trenton. And he was trying to surprise the Hessian army that had joined the British army in the fight against the Americans. So George Washington was going to do a surprise attack on Christmas. The thing is, though, is that Hessian fort had backup nearby. There was another Hessian fort that was really close. So it would have been really easy to let him know, hey, we need some help over here. We're getting attacked by George Washington. Get your butt over here and help. But this is where a beautiful young spy steps in. A beautiful young woman and her friends went to the nearby Hessian fort, and they had a party. They bought the booze, and they had a grand old time. In the morning, those officers were completely drunk and passed out. So they didn't ever come to help because they were sloshed.
Because of young, beautiful women.
Exactly.
Women have so much power.
Yep. So many believe it was Betsy Ross that pulled this off. And so the woman that is credited for designing our flag, just think about this. She was a young, beautiful spy that led directly to the victory at the Battle of Trenton. So you go, girl.
That's fun. I like that story. For my last one is an article that I have read and reread several times. It touches my heart so much. It is The Man in the Water. This story made national news for Flight 90 crashed into the water. And I'll read straight from the article. The person most responsible for the emotional impact of the disaster is known at first simply as the man in the water. Balding, probably in his 50s, an extravagant mustache, he was seen clinging with 5 other survivors to the tail section of the airplane. Every time they lowered a lifeline, the man would pass it to another passenger. In a mass casualty, you'll find people like him. When the helicopter came back for him, the man had gone under. His selflessness was one reason the story held national attention, his anonymity another. The fact that he went unidentified invested him with a universal character. For a while, he was every man, and thus proof, as if one is needed, that no man is ordinary. Still, he could have imagined such a capacity of himself. Only minutes before his character was tested, he was sitting in the ordinary plane among ordinary passengers, dutifully listening to the stewardess telling him to fasten his seatbelt and saying something about the no smoking sign. So our man relaxed with others, some of whom would owe their lives to him. Perhaps he started to read or to doze or regret some harsh remark he had made in the office that morning. Then suddenly he knew that trip would not be ordinary. Like every other person on that flight, he was desperate to live, which makes his final act so stunning. For at some moment in the water, he must have realized that he would not live if he continued to hand over the rope and ring to others. He had to know it, no matter how gradual the effect of the cold. In his judgment, he had no choice. When the helicopter took off for what would be the last survivor, he watched everything in the world move away from him, and he deliberately let it happen. If the man in the water gave a lifeline to the people grasping for survival, he was likewise giving a lifeline to those who observed it. The odd thing is that we do not even really believe that the man in the water lost his fight. So the man in the water had his own natural powers. He could not make ice storms or freeze the water until it froze with blood, but he could hand life over to a stranger. And that is the power of nature too. The man in the water pitted himself against the impersonal enemy. He fought with charity, and he held it to a standoff. He was the best we can do. And this hidden hero never has a name in the article. He truly is hidden, an ordinary man who kept passing a lifeline to someone else, which is the best we can do.
Our final thoughts. While preparing for this, I had this song repeated in my head over and over. It's an old country song. Heroes come in every shape and size, making special sacrifices for others in their lives. No one gives them medals. The world don't know their names, but in someone's eyes, they're heroes just the same. This is just restating the definition that they're knowingly sacrificing for others. And I just want to say this really clearly to all of our listeners. This is you. You are a hero to someone. Last week, we talked about a talk by Elder Bednar. Elder Bednar quoted J. Reuben Clark. He said, he praised these anonymous and uncelebrated heroes who day after day, week after week, and month after month, choked on the dust stirred up by all the wagons rolling in front of them, and who overcame the relentless obstacles they encountered along the way. President Clark declared, They of the last wagon press forward, worn and tired, footsore, sometimes almost disheartened, borne up by their faith that God loved them. So we may be stuck in the back of the wagon train, choking on dust. We're tired, our feet are sore, and sometimes we may get disheartened, but there are people in your life that see what you're doing, and they may not show it all the time, but I know that they are grateful. But most importantly, God sees it, and he knows that you are sacrificing and putting others before yourself, and he sees the seeds of kindness and goodness and love that you are planting. So I just want to say thank you to all the people in my life. I truly thank you for just trying your best and being a hero.
Our challenge this week is to shift your attention from the faces that are put in front of us on social media and in the news and find a hidden hero, whether it's in your family line or if it requires a little bit of research and reading. Find a hidden hero and learn about their life. And we would love to know if you find someone spectacular. Feel free to DM us who you find on Sydney and Sher podcast on Instagram.
This is our prayer
From Sydney and Sher.
Have a good week.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop. When eternity's plan, I just can't stop. I'm making my way through the drip drop.
That's funny. Oh, I just said that's funny. So weird. And I'm feeling paranoid. You're going to turn it into something. Please don't. All right. That's funny. A representation. When I sing in the shower, nobody's around. It still sounds bad. I was about the age of When I listened to the video, so many people said his name differently. Helmuth. Do you know much about German?
Not one thing. I don't know anything.
They were, sorry. I keep saying sorry. It's only because I'm tired. I have no heart. It made me crack like a 12-year-old boy.
Prison, and she started doing the British, why is this so hard? She started doing the British soldiers' laundry. British soldiers' laundry.
Just say it 5 times fast
Okay.
and you'll be able to get it.
All right. So she went to the prison and she started to do the British soldiers' laundry.
Fire.
Was it fire?
That's fire.
I'm sure.
Pinky. Ben's my hero because he found the scripture that I've been looking for all morning. He found it in 5 seconds. And blah, blah, blah. I have this.
I know you do. You got it.
There's the makings there. Just like need some editing magic. Go home. All right. This will get all of it out. Okay. Here I go. Ready, set, let's record. We're recording now. Check 1, 2, 3. Check. How's that?
I'm going to punch you.
That's why we're going to get a table that's like farther apart.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't punch me. Oh gosh, that's the motion right there. Okay.
Thanks. Now I have emotion. Thank you.
At least you didn't pay for it. I did. Yeah.